Hey guys, welcome back to another doll customizing video. In today's video, I will be showing you how I made a fairy garden mouse. I've been wanting to repaint this Mouscedes doll for a pretty long time and I just had to figure out my idea for her. I thought it would be cute to make her into a garden mouse and I wanted to try making fairy wings again, hence the name Fairy Garden Mouse. With that said, let's go ahead and get started. This is my concept sketch for her design. My vision for her outfit kind of reminded me of a Tooth Fairy outfit, but I did give it some garden and nature elements like the petal skirt, which in the end I think is a home run once you see it finished. It turned out really well, and to match her nature element design, I gave her a golden leaf headband. To complement her green color palette, I decided to use lilac for her shirt and also her hair. Here is the Mouscedes doll that I will be using. I really like her with pink hair, but I think purple will really complement her gray skin tone because it does have a slight purple sparkle to it. To get her ready for her reroot, I cut off her hair with a sharp pair of scissors, and then I used some hot water to soften her neck peg and pull off her head. Then I used some pliers to pull out the remaining plugs from the inside of her head. And then I finally removed the pink paint on her head using some acetone and a cotton ball. I didn't remove her factory face just because I wanted to see what she would look like with purple hair once I finished the reroot. Before I reroot her, I have to paint her head with a lilac paint. The hair I will be using is from dollyhair.com and it does contain 4 different shades. The colors are Fairy's Breath, Wisteria, Hyacinth, and Marshmallow. This hair is also in the length long. In real time, I actually ended up making her whole outfit before I finished rerooting her head and doing her face up. So just to follow along my actual process this time, we are going to be moving straight into clothing and accessories. For her petal skirt, I wanted her skirt to not only be in shapes of leaves, but also have a leaf print on them. To make it a little bit more interesting, I ended up choosing 2 different leaf prints. For her top, I found this perfect fabric that contained a lilac background with some purple and green flowers. And to give her a poofy sleeve, I will be using some tulle in a matching lilac color. To make her top, I will be using this top pattern that I use for dresses. I will also be using this puff sleeve pattern that is part of a dress pattern that I purchased from Etsy. Since Mouscedes has a smaller body compared to other Monster High dolls, I had to adjust the pattern to have it fit properly on her. So when I did that, I traced the new patterns out, which is the new blue pieces that you see now. To start making the top, I sew the top pieces at the shoulders facing right sides together. Once the top is connected, I add some darts to the top to help it fit better on the doll. Then I add a white trim around the collar. I thought it would be a cute detail and I do add it to some other parts of her outfit. To help this trim lay down a bit easier, I do run a top stitch on the front of the top. To give her a puff sleeve, I run a gathering stitch and pull the thread. The gathered part of the sleeve will be attached to the shoulder area on the top. This is the top with both sleeves attached and halfway closed. I'm showing you this kind of halfway mark of the top being finished because I made the top a little bit shorter to fit the trim that I wanted to add at the bottom. Like I did for the collar, I run a top stitch to help the trim lay down flat. In my concept sketch of the doll's outfit, I had a trim at the bottom of the top and also as the waistband of the skirt. So that is why I made the top a bit shorter so that there would be enough space for the 2 trims to meet without overlapping. I wanted the sleeves to be a little bit poofier, so all I did was fold some of the tulle underneath the sleeves, which gave a really cute poofy effect, and it was pretty effective for something so simple. To finish the top, I added Velcro to the back and add some gray buttons with gold thread. To make her petal skirt, I made some patterns that I will be using to cut out the leaf shapes. I did make a slightly smaller leaf pattern and a larger leaf pattern with a more jagged design. Something that I was super excited to try on this doll was this Arteza heat transfer vinyl. For the petal skirt, I wanted to add some gold detailing and I thought it would be really cool if each petal had a gold trim. I might have gotten the same effect if I just painted the gold trim onto the petal pieces, but it would have taken a really long time to cut out each leaf petal out of fabric using the pattern pieces, and I also would have had to fray check each pattern piece individually. This heat transfer vinyl comes with 22 different colors to choose from, including neon colors and a silver and gold. Even the colors that aren't neon are still very bright, and I can imagine that they would show up as bright when you use them. For this particular project, I did only use the gold, but it did appear as gold and shiny as I would have expected it to when I applied them. My theory for this project was once I used the heat transfer vinyl on the fabric, it would kind of seal the edges for me and I wouldn't need to fray check the leaves. And I wouldn't need to individually cut each leaf out of the fabric. So to test my theory, I used the neon orange vinyl. It's a very bright color and I don't think I will be using it as much as I might some of the other colors. The petals came out really great, so this is when I decided to do 2 other leaf shapes to give the skirt a little bit more dimension. Using the leaf patterns that I cut out of paper, I traced them onto the vinyl and cut them out. There is a particular side that you need to have facing the fabric in order for the vinyl to stick. You can actually tell which side is the correct side by the way they feel, but once I cut out the pieces, they're going to be pretty small for me to tell, so I used some bobby pins to stick onto the fabric and hold them in place until I can iron them. The vinyl makes it much easier to cut out the fabric pieces because all I have to do is cut out some rectangles for the vinyl to stick onto, and then I will have to cut out the shapes after they have been ironed. Once the gold vinyl has been ironed on to all the pieces, I peel away the film to leave me with a nice gold detail for the leaves. I also cut out a few solid gold leaves in different shapes to add to the skirt. Once the clear film was removed, I cut out the petal pieces with a sharp pair of scissors. All in all, I still like this whole process because it did add a very clean trim to the skirt petals. If I simply painted the gold trim onto the petals, I still would have had to cut out each petal out of the fabric, fray checked it, and then painted the gold trim and let it dry. So this process probably took the same amount of time, but I think it looks more professional and even. Based on how the skirt turned out and how well the vinyl worked, I actually have a Halloween project that I want to try using this vinyl again for. To create the petal skirt, I measure out some of the white trim to go around the doll's waist, as well as a piece of fabric the same length. Then I will be arranging the petals on the green fabric using some Fabri-Tac glue. I made sure to leave enough space from the top of the green fabric for the white trim to be sewn onto. If I did the petals right on the top of the fabric, the white trim would have covered up pretty much all of the tiny little petals, so that is why I made sure to leave enough space. This is the petal skirt with the white trim waistband added. In order to connect the skirt together, I overlapped the white trim waistband in the back and hand stitch it closed. I tried the skirt on the doll just to make sure that it would fit right. The only problem was that in the back, the petals kind of separated and it wasn't enough to cover the whole doll's body. Thankfully, I did have a few petals left over, so once the doll is complete, I will hand glue the petals onto the waistband so that it covers the back of the doll. I wasn't sure if I was going to keep Mouscedes' mouse tail, but in the end I did keep it because it kind of holds the skirt in place and it helps with keeping the trim in the front in the correct position. The last accessory I made before I started working on her face up and hair was this little fairy wand. My failed first attempt was using some beads and wire, but it fit too small in Mouscedes' hand and it didn't look as polished as her outfit. I instead made her a wand using a stick and a star button. The first thing I did was peel away a couple of paper layers from the stick because I wanted to make sure that when I covered it with a shiny layer of gold paper, it wouldn't make the stick too big. Then I painted the button with a light purple paint and the little star details with white paint. I covered the stick with the gold paper using Mod Podge and painted one side with a light purple stripe. Since the gold paper was a little bit thick, I actually ripped off a second back layer so that the foil was a little bit thinner, and then all I had to do was twist the foil around the stick. Then I used hot glue to connect the stick and button together before using high gloss varnish to give the paint a nice shine. At this time, I also painted Mouscedes' nails with a light purple paint and covered them with gloss as well. Here is Mouscedes with her hair finally completely rerooted. A similar issue I had with her hair was that I could barely tell the difference between the lilac and the blue. It is noticeable now, but when I was trying to find the color as I was doing each plug, it was a little bit harder. But I stopped worrying about it because it was going to be mixed up in the end. Now it is finally time to work on her face up, but before I do that, I need to wipe off her factory face using 100% pure acetone and a cotton ball. Since Mouscedes has a pretty distinctive face mold, I decided to start with coloring in the whites of her eyes. It was much easier to do it this way, that way I could get the shape of her eyes right. I know it's not everybody's style, but I love giving my dolls super big eyes, so that is no exception to this Mouscedes doll, even with her really hard mold. Her eyes are going to be super big, just you wait. Then I go ahead and add her waterline using my pink Derwent watercolor pencil. Even though her eyes are still going to be much bigger than other dolls, I still tried to keep her waterline pretty small. Now I use my light brown watercolor pencil to draw in her top eyeliner and eyelashes. I decided to start with a lighter color because I wasn't sure if using a darker color would make her eyes look too heavy. Normally, I would answer a comment section question, but I don't think I ever found one when I'm recording this voiceover, so I might have missed it, but please leave your questions in this video so I can have a question to answer in my next video. To match her top eyelashes, I draw in her bottom eyelashes using the same brown pencil. This is just her initial color, but I do use dark brown as her darkest color for her face-up. And with that same brown, I also add in the crease for her eyelid. Now I begin drawing in her eyebrows using a gray watercolor pencil. I decided to use gray instead of a brown pencil because if I lightly sketch it in with the gray pencil, it won't be as noticeable if I make a mistake and have to erase it compared to the brown. I feel like I made myself second guess my technique because I actually messed up the eyebrows quite a bit to the point where I erased one whole eyebrow, but we'll get to that later. Now with my white pencil, I go ahead and color in her little teeth that are on her lips, and then I use the same pink that I used for her waterline to shape her lips and color them in. I almost thought of cutting out the little mold that she has for her teeth just to try it out, but at this point the doll was pretty much complete. All I needed was to finish up her face and a few accessories, but I stopped myself because I figured why mess with the doll at this stage. Her teeth are a signature mouse characteristic, and on that note, I also gave her a little pink nose. Before I give her a spray of Mr. Super Clear, I go ahead and blush her face using some soft pink pastels, focusing on her forehead, cheeks, nose, and chin. Once I sprayed her with MSC, I used my darkest brown pencil to go over her eyelashes and the ends of her eyebrows. I also went over any other colors to make them more saturated. I kept her face up on the soft side by using brown as my darkest color instead of black. I do prefer using black for my darkest color on face-ups because it makes everything look more saturated and colorful at the same time. It makes darker colors darker and brighter colors pop. But for this face-up in particular, it was more important that her face matched her outfit and theme by staying on the softer side. Once I finished adding in her bottom eyelashes, I almost sprayed her with another layer of MSC, but before I did that, I erased her right eyebrow because it was not even, and I knew I would be mad at myself if I kept it like that. Once I sprayed the next layer of MSC, I used my gray watercolor pencil to sketch in her pupil and also shade in the top half of her eye. I didn't want to make her face up look too weird, so I decided to give her purple eyes. I was debating on whether or not I should give her lime green eyes, but I ended up saving that color for her eyeshadow. Now that I have all of my layers down with colored pencils, I start painting on the colors with my paintbrush, starting first with white. I did also use my paintbrush to color her waterline and eyes, but I forgot to record this, but as you can see, one side is much brighter and saturated than the other. I paint on her eyebrow hairs for more detail near the center part of her eyebrows. Her eyebrows looked a little weird, so I ended up painting on the brown a little bit closer so that not as many eyebrow hairs were noticeable. I go over the highlights underneath her eyebrows and on her cupid's bow so that they can be a little bit brighter, and I also start adding highlights to her top and bottom eyelashes. Now that her eyes are very nice and bright, I start adding in the tiny little details into her eyes like the brown lines and highlights. To give her face a little bit more shine, I use my Pearl X powder and add it onto her forehead and cheeks. Now I start adding in the white highlights into her eyes. I still like adding one big highlight and also a little dot highlight, but I do think the lines give her face more details that I am really liking. Now that her face up is almost complete, I still need to add a little bit more detail into her lips and teeth to make them match the rest of her detailed face. And also, I kind of outline her teeth and give creases to her lips. I also try to give her very subtle highlights onto her lips. And with that her face up is complete, I go ahead and seal her with 3 layers of MSC just to make sure that her face is completely protected. In my Little Fairies doll video, you would have seen my first attempt at making doll wings. It was kind of a fail, but in that video I think I did say that I was going to be buying some fairy film so that I could make some fairy wings like how other doll customizers do. But as I was working on this doll and getting closer to start making her wings, I thought to myself, why would I show you guys a method of making doll wings that you probably have already seen before? So instead I decided to come up with my own method for making doll wings. To make these wings, I traced out some shapes using regular paper. I labeled them 1, 2, and 3 because they are going to be a pair of layered wings, not just one solid shape. And I will be using this Joanne vinyl roll in the color Pink Purple Holographic. Here is a look at the wing shapes that I made. The next thing I do is trace the shapes onto the back of the vinyl on the white paperback side. In order to make the full set of wings, you need to trace and cut out 2 of each wing shape that you plan to make. I want the wings to be holographic on both sides, so the next step is to peel off the white backing on the wings that you cut out and also a portion of a full vinyl sheet. What I did was stick them together and cut them one more time so that both sides of the wings are the same holographic vinyl. To connect these wings and make it a little bit easier for display and removal, I use a gold fastener to connect the wings and hold them together. To keep the wings a little bit more even and keep them from sliding around, I plan on sliding the wings onto the fastener, going every other side. Then I cut a small line into the corner of the wings so that I can slide them through the fastener. Try not to get too close to the edge or else it will rip the vinyl. On the back side of the wings, I left the round part of the fastener visible because it is a much neater finish. On the side that will be facing the doll's back, I cut off the extra fastener and use a piece of vinyl to cover up the wire and hold the wings together. To connect the wings to the doll, I will be using a small magnet that will be held together between the doll's shirt so that I don't actually have to glue anything onto the doll and the wings can be easily removed. My original concept of her hair was just simply pulled back around her ears, flowing down her back, but after I placed the wings on her hair was kind of heavy and it would bend the wings. So instead I gave her some braids and a long ponytail. I gave her 3 braids on one side and 2 braids on the other, and then I left 1 braid hanging down the side of her face on each side, and the remaining braids went behind her head around her ponytail. To finish off her hairstyle, I added locks around the braids going down her face, using some gold ribbon which I also used to wrap around her feet for shoes. Another change I made was instead of giving her a gold leaf headband, I gave her some gold leaf earrings. For this project, I used the same vinyl for her wings and stuck it onto a gold sheet of paper. I cut out these leaf shapes and glued them onto her ears. Now that her final accessory is complete, let's go ahead and take some final photos. Here is the doll all finished, and I think she came out amazing. The funny thing is that the doll stand she is using is normally short for her anyways, so it works out perfectly that she should be floating off the ground since she is flying. My favorite part about this doll has to be her skirt. In terms of detail and quality, it was a very ambitious project for me to take on. I think it did come out as well as I wanted it to. I wanted to make sure that it didn't look too crafty. It came out exactly like I pictured when I made the concept for her, and I'm really glad that the iron-ons from Arteza worked out well too. The wings are another favorite, and I hope you guys like this easier method. If any of you guys decide to make wings for your dolls using my method, don't forget to tag me on Instagram at Fovea dolls so I can make sure and check them out. Well, this is the end of the video. Thank you guys so much for watching and joining me on another doll customizing video. Like always, feel free to leave a like and subscribe if you want to join me on more doll customizing videos. Let me know what you guys thought of this doll in the comment section below. Don't forget to leave suggestions for Halloween ideas. The doll in my next video will be sort of a sequel to a past repaint that you all seem to enjoy. So stay tuned for that, and thanks again for watching, and I'll see you in another video.